All right, friends, here we are. Let me introduce our next speaker. It is Sister Katherine Fitzgerald, who is a member of the Benedictine Sisters of Virginia in Bristow, Virginia. She made perpetual monastic profession on September 4th, 2021. Currently, Sister K serves as monastery coordinator, spiritual director coordinator, vocation team member, and as a member of the National Capital Area Ignatian Volunteer Corps. Sister K is pursuing an MAT degree from St. John's University School of Theology. She is a retired Chief Compliance Officer for a national law firm. Prior to entering the monastic life, she served in a variety of volunteer positions, including catechist, retreat facilitator, spiritual director, Ignatian Spirituality Project facilitator, and ICE Detention Center chaplain. Let's welcome Sister K.
Good afternoon. I will start with a disclaimer that if you come second to the last on a full day of talks, you get to point to the other people on the panel and say what they said and be done with it. But I guess Dr. Gu won't let me get away with that. Christianity over the past 2,000 years has gained an impressive number of followers. Christianity, or more precisely, Jewish Christian communities, started as small, unorganized sects drawn from areas where Jesus preached. Christianity spread out from these unimpressive beginnings across the Roman Empire. Propagation of the faith was largely orchestrated by the original apostles and by St. Paul. In particular, Paul, commonly known as the apostle to the Gentiles, spent days, weeks, months, and years traveling over 10,000 miles across the then Roman Empire, spreading the teachings of Jesus Christ. Christianity is still evolving globally. That is to say that over 2.2 billion people, representing 30% of the world's population, have accepted the teachings of Jesus Christ. This percentage indicates that Christianity is the most dominant religion. Conversion, as demonstrated, is not new. What is new are the locations where conversion is happening. According to our studies this semester, Christianity is migrating to the Southern Hemisphere. The number of people self-identifying as Christian is increasing in Africa, Asia, Central America, and South America. Immigration, or migration of peoples, on the other hand, is seen as a global crisis, with people from the Southern Hemisphere migrating to places above the equator. I believe that one should begin to ask the question, how does this global migration of worshipers impact the liturgy within the local context? To answer that question, I sought to engage with a community from another ethnic origin, cultural background, language, and worship tradition that had migrated to my local area. I discovered a Ghanaian Catholic community worshiping close by and sought to engage with their community and their chaplain, Father Augustine. The community worships each Sunday at St. Mary of Sorrows Catholic Church in Fairfax, Virginia. First, I will share 2 case studies from my experience as a participant at Sunday worship with the Fairfax community. I will seek to compare and contrast the Fairfax community to communities worshiping in Ghana. Second, I will provide an example of Catholic Christian worship in Ghana, Africa. Finally, I will attempt to articulate what challenges exist and what opportunities may lie ahead for the Ghanaian community in Fairfax. I believe it is important to note that as of 2015, approximately 235,000 Ghanaian immigrants lived in the United States. This immigrant population from Ghana is widely distributed across the United States, with a large number in New York State, followed by Virginia, New Jersey, and Maryland. The United States is the second most common destination for Ghanaian immigrants. According to Father Augustine, of the 1,000 families registered as part of the Ghanaian community in Fairfax, 70% are first generation born in Ghana. Case study number 1 represents my attendance at their Palm Sunday service. St. Mary of Sorrows Church is cruciform in shape with a prominent rose window on the main facade. The interior is defined by a series of round arches oriented toward a large sanctuary. The center aisle is long and narrow, and the roof soars above the congregation. 7 stained glass windows depicting the 7 sorrows of Mary provide a backdrop to the sanctuary. The choir and organ are ensconced high above the assembly, presumably to enable the music to rise more easily toward heaven. According to architectural documents, the church is constructed to seat 1,100 people. On Palm Sunday, the church is comfortably full. Mass started at the old church, which now serves as the community center and parish offices. It is approximately 1.5 blocks away. Processions are a large part of the liturgy in Ghana, as they are in this community. So the entire congregation walked out of the main church to begin the Mass down the hill at the parish center. Approximately 30 minutes after the start of Mass, the assembly processed back to the main sanctuary in high spirits, waving palms and singing together in Twi. The celebration of the Mass was bilingual, English and Twi. Twi is an African language spoken in the southern 2/3 of Ghana. The language is spoken in 2 major dialects, Ashanti or Akan and Fanti. Another dialect, Akwampam Twi, was the first dialect to be used for Bible translation. All dialects of Twi are mutually intelligible. Ashanti or Akan Twi is spoken by about 44% of the population in Ghana as a first language, with the remainder of the population using it as a second language. Therefore, the best medium of dialogue and worship in Fairfax is English and the Akan language, which is presumably understood by all. The bilingual aspect of the Mass was evidenced in the following way. The gospel reading prior to the procession was in English and Twi. The first reading was in Twi. The second reading was in English. The Passion was read in both languages. The prayers of the faithful were split between both languages. The sermon was in both languages, with singing included in the Twi portion. There was a sung acclamation in Twi after each element of the Holy Eucharist was consecrated. According to Father Augustine, dressing to perfect occasions calls for the display of African tenacity. Priests wear traditional Ghanaian colors and symbols in their vestments. The dress code of the people mirrors liturgical colors and traditional colors of African dress with symbols. Dress makes the worship beautiful with no intent of distracting anyone at worship. Our cultural display makes us proud of what we possess and wear to liturgical functions, end quote. The Christian Mothers Association is well represented on this Sunday, with many women dressed in a habit of sorts that identifies them as, as members of the organization. They all wear a turban style of head covering with a single strand of pearls and pearl earrings. Some men wear a traditional Ghanaian toga style dress. Most women not identifying as part of the Christian Mothers Association still wear long dresses and head coverings. Men not wearing the Ghanaian toga are dressed in suits similar to local businessmen from Fairfax, but without ties. Another element noted in the various fabrics are androcra, Used for generations, Andrika are Kan symbols drawn in ink and used by the Ashanti people in Ghana. Their representations and meanings are linked to fables and are used to bestow wisdom and knowledge. The history of the Ashanti people, their way of life, and their philosophy are all captured by Andrika. Andrika symbols appear in Ghana on many royal objects preserved by the Ashanti people, the most precious of which is that of the golden stool. The stool is the life force of the Ashanti kingdom and the grandest symbol of authority. Other regalia includes Akan weights, scepters, crowns, and kente, or Ghanaian cloth, which are all prominent at festivals. The symbols continue to be used by the Ashanti people as well as the Ghanaian diaspora in their art, fashion, and daily lives. Let me take a moment to introduce and speak about associations. Associations and devotional groups are present in Fairfax, including the Christian Mothers Association, the Knights of Columbus, and the St. Teresa Society. Associations play a prominent role in the Catholic Church in Ghana. They are seen as a way of identifying who belongs to the local church body. This serves as a way of integration, but is also an element of safety, in particular for women. And so associations include not only the ones mentioned as existing in Fairfax, but also many others, including the Catholic Charismatic Renewal, the Catholic Association for Social and Religious Advancement, Catholic Women's Association, Christian Daughters Association, Holy Family Society, Knights and Ladies Auxiliary of St. John International, the Legion of Mary, our Perpetual Help Fraternity, and the Sacred Heart Confraternity, to name just a few. There were 3 specific gestures that deviated from the norm that you would see in the United States. First, the typical Iran's position of prayer is not used when there is a blessing and response directed toward or received from the congregation. Instead, Father uses a wax on, wax off gesture. So instead of his hands being like this, his hands are like this, and he's doing, "The Lord be with you." And the people respond, "And with your spirit." So this happens throughout the Mass. The second gesture, the beating of the breasts during the Confiteor. So I confess to Almighty God, through my fault, through my most previous fault. That is not used according in the Ghanaian tradition, because the beating of breasts is a sign of arrogance. So instead, they use their right hand, open-handed, to touch their chest, or they will use their right hand perpendicular to their chest to say, "This is my fault, this is my confession. This has nothing to do with God or you or anyone else." So just a nuance of difference in gesture. And finally, the priest and the people consume the consecrated host from their right hand with their left hand covering. So you do not see them consume the host. They're actually holding it at the top, and Father holds it at the top when he elevates it at the consecration. But when the Eucharist is received and actually consumed, they are consuming it with their right hand, holding it in their right hand, and covering with their left hand. The music on this particular Sunday seems an uneasy blend of organ and native drums. The drums are not dominant as they are located in the choir loft behind the choir. This location makes it difficult for the drums to speak, as would be the custom in Ghana. On Palm Sunday, there are 2 processions that take place at the offertory. During the first procession, everyone in the entire congregation comes dancing up to place their offering into the baskets that are strategically placed at the foot of the altar. If there is no offering envelope, the people still come forward and touch the basket. Father touches everyone in some manner as a way of receiving what is offered. A second procession queues in the center aisle. This includes an acolyte carrying a cross, all of the altar servers, all of the liturgical ministers, the lectors, the ushers for that Sunday, with community members carrying white envelopes bringing up the rear of the procession. There is a fluid dance to the cadence of drums as all approach the altar. The white envelopes are collected in a basket, and Father scoops it along with the first basket of offering and dances forward to the altar. The whole scene is well choreographed and joyous. I interviewed Father at the end of Mass and asked him questions regarding the drums, the dance, and the two offerings. He explained that, quote, "It is important to remember that the African is expressive by nature. Therefore, the usage of musical instruments, both local and foreign for them, give beauty to the liturgical worship. The musical instruments are accompanied by colorful dancing of the congregation, making the liturgy rich. This brings the active and conscious participation in the liturgy to everyone," end quote. He went on to explain that, quote, "During the first offering, everyone dances off, offering what they have, including and sometimes only themselves. The second offering of white envelopes are from people who that week have received special blessings and are offering a monetary gift of thanksgiving for that special blessing," end quote. The second case study, my second attendance at Mass with this community, was on the third Sunday of Easter. There were a few differences in the celebration on that Sunday. The Mass was again in bilingual with the same divisions as Palm Sunday. The associations were still represented, only this time it was the Knights of Columbus and St. Teresa's Society. The school children were dismissed from the assembly to go with their teachers for their catechesis. Throughout the Mass, beginning with the Gloria, which is sung mostly in Twi, there is the added element of waving white handkerchiefs. This continued happening throughout the Mass. There was a John Philip Sousa type communion medication with singing, clapping, and waving of the white handkerchiefs. At the end of Mass, there is another procession dancing up the aisle. Baskets are assembled for each day of the week in 3 different rounds: Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The baskets are placed on the tables immediately below the altar. There is lots of singing and dancing as people come up to place offerings into the baskets. On the last round, one of the baskets is on a higher table than the others. When I interviewed Father about this after Mass, this was his explanation. In Ghana, the first name you receive is the day you were born. This is believed to be the name given to you by God. So if you're born on Friday, your first name is Friday in Twi. On the second Sunday of the month, a collection is taken up from each person for their name day or their birthday. The higher basket is because that was Father's birth or name day. This collection taken at the end of Mass is for this community specifically. All of the other collections are for the home parish or the hospitality parish of St. Mary of Sorrows. Father said the Ghanaians are very competitive, so there is always a gusty participation. Everything is counted, and at the end of the liturgical year, a small party is provided to the name day winners out of the proceeds that have been collected. Father's birth group won last year's competition. So in Ghana, I'm going to give you a little bit of background in regards to Archbishop Emeritus Peter Serpong, who is from Ghana. He was born on February the 6th, 1933 in Ashanti. He was ordained a Catholic priest on the 11th of December in 1959. Approximately 10 years after his ordination to the priesthood, he was appointed bishop of the Diocese of Kumasi, as it was then, and ordained bishop on the 8th of March in 1970 at the age of 37. As the bishop of the Diocese of Kumasi, he was at the time in charge of the Catholic Church in both the Ashanti region and the former Brong Afo region. On January 17th, 2002, he was appointed the first Archbishop of the newly elevated Archdiocese of Kumasi by His Holiness Pope John Paul II. He retired from that position on March the 26th, 2008 at the age of 75. Before retiring, he held various appointments at various times at the Vatican, including being a long-term member of the Peace Council. Archbishop Emeritus Peter is considered by some to be one of the brainiest academics in Africa and the world, and the most cited social anthropologist in Ghana, Africa, and the world at large. Archbishop Emeritus Peter was Father Augustine's formator and bishop. So, quoting from an article that was written by Washington Obang in regards to the Africanization of the Mass, this is what he writes. In response to the spirit of Vatican II's Sacrosanctum Concilium, the Ghanan Bishops' Conference, including Bishop Peter, have put forward the following. The mystery of the Incarnation demands that Christianity be enculturated. The Christian faith should be implanted in all cultures. In view of this, African thought patterns, lifestyle, dress, ways of celebrating, music, preferences for color and materials, etc., must be reflected in our being church and incorporated in our Christian liturgy, catechesis, and theologies. The bishops further assert that the African, for many years, is still not at home with Christianity, since its theologies, spirituality, style of worship, prayers, rites, structures, and even architecture are European in nature. The article I draw from, published in 2000, speaks of the then Bishop Peter Sarpong and the Asante Diocese under Bishop's jurisdiction had translated liturgical rites and the Bible into the Asante Shui, using Asante symbols in the liturgical celebration, had composed and employed liturgical songs based on local tunes and idioms, and makes use of local musical instruments such as drums, flutes, shakers, and xylophones. So it gives an example of Bishop Peter entering St. Peter's Cathedral to the sound of a kiti, or the Asante king's drum, accompanied by songs and the sounds of castanets. As he approaches the altar, he removes his sandals and mitre before he genuflects. He then sits on an asipum as the Asante king's ceremonial chair, under a special umbrella. Sarpong's scrosier, which is held to accompany him by a linguist, is like a linguist staff, bears Asante proverbial emblems. One of such is the two-headed crocodile with one stomach, which is an Asante symbol of unity and diversity. This Asante symbol is the heart of Ghanaian concept of the clan system, purporting that they all descend from common ancestress. I will approach the challenges and opportunity for the Fairfax Ghanaian community through the lens of the colonization of Ghana. According to historical documentation found on the Ghanaian Catholic Bishop website, the first Catholic Mass was said in Elman in 1482. Before March of 1957, Ghana was called the Gold Coast. The Portuguese traders who came to Ghana in the 15th century found so much gold between the rivers that they named the place Mina, meaning mine. The Gold Coast was later adopted by the English colonizers. In 1598, the Dutch traders joined the Portuguese traders. By the mid-18th century, other European traders, English, Danes, and Swedes, joined the ranks. By the latter part of the 19th century, the Dutch and British were the only traders left. And when the Dutch withdrew in 1874, Britain made the Gold Coast a crown colony. At the time of this official colonization by Great Britain, the Catholic faith was highly recognized by all ecclesial bodies in Ghana. The church in Ghana has been progressively changing, and enculturation has occurred. The identity of the church is still valuable and up to date. However, there have been quite a few modifications. Time, factor, lifestyle, language, documents, and architectural designs of the church buildings have all been affected. Looking at the diaspora located in Fairfax and speaking with Father Augustine, the biggest challenge he identified was time. In Ghana, he said the Mass starts and ends when it starts and ends. It is the event of the day. In Fairfax, the Ghanaians have use of the church from 1:15 to 4 p.m., at which point they must vacate. In Ghana, singers and instruments are located with the people, not in a remote choir loft. Because there are second-generation Ghanaians that do not know Twi, the Mass must be bilingual. Constructing their own Ghanaian Catholic Church is a dream. However, because of the complexity and cost of such a project, the dream is unlikely to be realized. Father Augustine was missioned by his bishop in Ghana to serve the Ghanaian church community in Fairfax. This missioning is seen as a means to retain the progress of enculturation already achieved in Ghana. Perhaps the better way would be for the Ghanaian members of St. Mary's of Sorrows to integrate into the wider church family. Perhaps the opportunity is within the entire community, plural in nature, to incorporate elements from all representative ethnic groups. Historically, the church land was donated in 1838 by two prominent Catholic families living in Fairfax, both Irish. In the late 1850s, Irish immigrants became the nucleus of the new parish. After the Civil War, an influx of German immigrants joined the parish. The pluralization of the entire church community continues today. While a space for worship has been generously provided, tongue-in-cheek, it is difficult for me to identify a true enculturation of the Ghanaian community. The community has its own website, a separate community council, media and communications committee, liturgical committee, and religious education committee. I propose that this is a paradigm of marginalization that actually perpetuates a myth of a true enculturation within the United States context. Perhaps there is a different way. Anthropologically, the Ghanaian peoples place great importance on eating a meal together. Perhaps the meal is the least and greatest common denominator that could bring about one liturgical experience for the entire community at St. Mary's of Sorrows in Fairfax. Perhaps.
Thank you, Sister Kay.